Hey guys, welcome back. So now, with getting into the King in Black, first and foremost, I do want to say, please excuse the audio for this video. Away from my usual setup, so we're kind of just making it work. But with that being said, Knull has arrived, and he is quickly letting people know, and he ain't nothing to play with. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top, so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so with the way that we jump into King in Black Part 1, Eddie and Dylan had just made their way back into the main Marvel Universe after the conclusion of Venom Beyond, but also at this point it puts us pretty close to the events that had taken place in Web of Venom Empyre's End. Back when we got a glimpse into the process of Knull blacking out the universe, which could have been a mini-series within itself, low-key. But we pick up here where both of those stories meet, and all the alerts are going out to the Avengers, who had been informed and been making preparations since the conclusion of Venom Island, back when Eddie gave all the Avengers the full rundown of who Knull is, and everything that Eddie knew as far as tips on how to combat Knull and hopefully defeat him. But it's also at this time after Eddie's called Cap and told the heroes to move into their positions, when Eddie then goes to get Dylan, who at this time Dylan also senses himself that Knull is close. But then it's right after this when we then jump over to Avengers Mountain, where we see that Tony's using leftover ships from the Kree Skrull Armada, which he's pretty much rigged to explode as soon as a wave of Knull's dragons comes close enough within striking distance. But I do gotta say, I'm not really sure that it's something about this plan specifically, but anytime that I see Tony hacking anything Skrull related, which post Empyre is now Kree or Skrull in the same, but for whatever reason, recently when Tony's had these kind of moments in relation to anything Skrull technology, I kind of feel like he just still wants to stick it to the Skrulls just after Secret Invasion. And I don't know, I could be looking into it too deep, but I just felt like there's been moments recently where his smirk's just a little bit bigger than usual. But in this case, when he's given the green light to blow up these ships and take out these Grendels, Eddie on the other hand, he's able to tell the scale of the effect of what Tony did. And he lets Tony know okay, well you took out about 100 of them, which is barely scratching the surface in comparison to the waves of these dragons still falling in. And as these symbiotes make their way and actually touch down to the ground or make contact with the buildings, they then begin to spread and merge, covering a large area super quick. But then it's also here where Eddie takes Dylan to a secret bunker that was built by Ezekiel, which originally had the purpose to protect spider totems from inheritors, which isn't a light task by any means, because inheritors were just super strong. And I got a link below that'll catch you up on all that, those guys were serious. But with Eddie taking Dylan to this bunker for his protection, Dylan begs for Eddie to let him out there and let him help, because we got a glimpse of what Dylan's capable of in Venom Beyond. And on top of that, Dylan even suggests that he could take control of part of Knull's army, and not even in a ridiculous way, but just in a way enough to contribute somehow. But very understandably so, Eddie is no, that's not gonna happen. Because even with everything that we know about Knull, nobody really knows the truest depths of his power. So with that being said, why would Eddie put his own son up against that with only the assurance of hoping for the best? And I mean, as the reader, we would want Dylan to go out there, but with Eddie being his father, it makes sense that he's not gonna let that happen. Not to forget that Eddie's also mentioned in the past that part of the reason that he goes so hard at times trying to protect Dylan, a lot of it really comes from a place where Eddie feels like he's let Dylan down prior to this point. And with that being the case, an argument could be made that Eddie's not thinking straight with just trying to hide Dylan, so it could really go either way here. But nonetheless, at this point, it's go time, so there's not a lot of room for improvisation at this point. But then it's here where we also get a look at Plan B, which then has Captain America on the ground, but at this point also heavily focused on heroes who either have access to some type of electrical power, and then aside from that, cosmic, and after that, magic. But all in all, really just trying to prioritize what they know will be effective against symbiotes and kind of gauging the maneuvers of the ground team from there. And so while Captain America is leading the heroes and handling the first wave on the ground, he more or less gets the comms like Avengers Endgame on your left, and it's via telepathy, not so much over the radio. But in this case, when it happens, Cap gets this "please excuse me" for "true to your minds," and when we see who it is, it's Charles Xavier lending the help of the X-Men. And this is a huge help because prior to this point, they had been waiting for Thor, whose calls have all been going straight to voicemail, and he's not answering his email. So fortunately enough, with the X-Men showing up here, they at least have the support with the thunder and lightning coming from Storm, which we've seen through Eddie as one of the most effective defenses against symbiotes recently. So it's good that Storm's at least there for the second wave. But then it's here where Eddie goes into his preparations for his plans for the third wave, to where in this case he plans to use the Spire from Absolute Carnage, to where prior to this point the plan was for him to tap into the minds of the symbiotes that have been struck down either by Storm or by Thor. But from the looks of it at this point, it seems like Storm either needs more concentration, either to form the lightning or to form the lightning and aim. But even still, regardless of who was playing that role, it's still a shot in the dark for Eddie to try to pull this together or make it work out. Because even still, at any point in time, Knull could just reach through the Venom symbiote and just choke Eddie out, or reach through the Spire itself and just ball that whole thing up. Which then also wouldn't be the ideal situation. But even still, Eddie has to try because the only other option would be using Dylan, and in the case of Eddie, he's not even trying to entertain that idea. But then it's here where Eddie connects to the Spire. The first thing he sees is just heavy hitters left and right being overwhelmed. Doctor Strange, with too many symbiotes pushing him back. Storm, practically in the same situation, throwing lightning in every direction, but instead she's getting closed in on fast. And during this time, Eddie, who's going back and forth on the comms with Tony, at this point he's like, it's not just the dragons, it's not just Knull, it's the Celestials. And like, I just imagine at this point in time that Knull needs some respect put on his name, because like if he was overhearing this, he'd be like, what you mean not just Knull, it's the Celestials? Because clearly Knull beat the Celestials, so it's like, where does he stand now? Because with just seeing the Celestials here, it's clear that Knull defeated the Celestials, but for some reason to everyone here observing, the symbiote Celestial is the wow factor rather than the person who made this happen. Because in my opinion, it's a bigger testament that Knull faced the Celestials before he had a Grendel, before he made the Necro Sword, and he didn't die. And I mean, after that, you can insert Knull severed the head of a Celestial created nowhere, but at no point should you fear the product more than the person who produced it. But it's here where Knull arrives and he sees all the heroes lined up, and he more or less tells them like, okay, yeah, I'm here to kill your world, and I'm looking for this guy named Brock as well, and I'm not really doing the two in any specific order, but if you hand over Brock, I'll make sure that the end of the world just goes as quickly as possible. But then it's also here where Cap gets his call for his big gun to come in, and that big gun of course is a Sentry. And really, like, during that time, just the anticipation of waiting on that big gun, like, to me in my mind it was like, okay, it was either gonna be the Sentry or like Blue Marvel or somebody. But with it being the Sentry and this being like your part one or your beginning of the King in Black, I feel like a lot of people just kinda knew what was coming next, especially with the duality of Bob Reynolds and the Void, and putting that up against the King of the Abyss, like, this wasn't gonna go well. And I feel like every reader had that feeling as soon as they turned the page and they saw the Sentry. But what's even crazier is that Knull, he tells the Sentry that he knows of him through the information that he's gained through the symbiotes. So with that being done, it's like step one, Knull's like, okay, I know who you are. But the sheer disrespect comes in when Knull uses the Sentry's signature move on the Sentry and just tears him in half, separating him from the Void with like your split explosion Sentry move. Like, that's the Sentry's signature move. Like, Knull just pulled the move of the Sentry, pun intended. And it's crazy seeing it take place, but I'm really glad that Donny Cates took the time to tie the Sentry and the Void and tie that to Knull very quick, because I feel like a lot of people were expecting that, but it's a whole nother thing seeing it, man. But when this happens, this pretty much marks just the beginning of the end. Knull has literally got the world flooded with symbiotes, and all he does is just lift his hand, and just like that, everyone who's on the ground team, they're covered in symbiotes. And from there, Knull just closes his hand, and the rest of the world is then blanketed by symbiotes, just like we had seen at Empyre's End. And when this happens, like, it's pretty crazy how we see Storm, who's like the last one standing here, especially with us knowing of like her conditions with being claustrophobic, and it's like she's reaching out to Tony for a plan, like what's the next move, or even Charles, like someone come up with something. And even though Tony is communicating that he's trying to figure out something, it's still crazy watching Storm go down, like after giving everything she's had to like the last moment. And even when this happens, like understandably so, like Charles is pissed, and for good reason, because the X-Men, they have been going through a lot as far as making sure mutants don't go extinct. So by all means, this isn't helping. But then it's here where Eddie gets kind of fed up and he tells Xavier and Tony that he has a plan, and with doing so he just tosses his earpiece. And you know good and well when somebody says they got a plan and they toss the earpiece, it's because they don't want nobody like to rebuttal or to argue with that plan. And really, like, when that happens, they're better off saying, well, I'm about to do something, here it go. Because for Eddie, his plan is just to give Knull what he wants and hopefully just end it there. So Eddie reaches out to Knull, giving up the location, and the symbiote just kind of gives Eddie this moment of, okay, this is it. Like, this is the end of the line, and I just want you to know that I love you, man. And I'm so glad, Eddie, that Eddie never treat me like animal. And I'm just playing, like, the symbiote ain't say none of that, but you can tell that he really wanted to open up in this moment. And if for no other reason than really just to tell Eddie thank you. Because really, even with like all the recent retroactive storytelling concerning the symbiote, whether in Venom First Host or Symbiote Spider-Man, like Eddie and the symbiote, they've been through the most. And after Eddie, I'd say like Flash, but either way, I'm sure there's no argument that Peter Parker's like the least connected to the symbiote. Like they would never have this kind of moment. And like, for some reason, it's kind of making me think of it on a deeper level. Like, Peter just got rid of the symbiote. Like, he didn't really give it a chance to be better. But at the same time, that dysfunction with Peter, it led to everything throughout the symbiosis and the relationship up until now. But either way. But with Knull seeing this beacon and finding where Eddie is and snatching him up, like right away Eddie's like, look, just get it over with, you got me. But then it's here where Knull recognizes Eddie from the first encounter with the Grendel, and Eddie's first time teaming up with Miles Morales, and really first time meeting Miles for that matter. But it's here where we quickly find out that Eddie, he is not the Brock that Knull is looking for. And after telling this to Eddie, he just rips off the Venom symbiote and tosses him down to the city. And although for the most part, this is like all new information for Eddie, like we already knew that Knull had his eyes set on Dylan, like from the Good Son to Dylan's dreams, Venom Island, like Dylan has been leaving Knull's messages on red for a minute. And really, man, I feel like if Dylan and Eddie had that father-son talk, like if Dylan opened up earlier and told Eddie more, like a lot could have been avoided. And vice versa too, like if Eddie could have told Dylan more, like a lot of things could have just been avoided. Because at the end of the day, either one of them, they're gonna find out through somebody else at some point, much like Eddie did here. But hopefully somebody catches him sometime between now and the next issue with Atlantis. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the Patreons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.